Emma moved up to join us, settling on my other side so that I was surrounded by their warmth. "Your turn to explore," she suggested, her hand guiding mine to Julie's body. What followed was a night of discovery unlike any I'd ever experienced. We moved together in an intricate dance of give and take, each of us both giver and receiver in turn. Julie's body was familiar yet foreign, her responses teaching me new ways to bring pleasure. Emma's patient guidance helped me navigate this new territory, her encouraging whispers boosting my confidence. When Julie reached her peak beneath my inexperienced but eager touch, her cry of release sent fresh heat coursing through my veins. Watching her face contort with pleasure, feeling her body arch beneath my hands, was almost as satisfying as my own earlier experience. Emma was next, her body responding beautifully to our combined attentions. Julie and I worked together, learning each other's rhythms as we focused on bringing Emma to the same heights we'd just experienced. Her release was quieter, but no less intense, her body trembling between us as she whispered our names. As the night wore on, we explored every possible combination, every way 3 bodies could come together in harmony. There were moments of awkwardness as we navigated this new dynamic, but they were quickly overcome by laughter and gentle guidance. Each peak we reached together seemed more intense than the last, building on the trust and connection we were forging. The early hours of morning found us tangled together in the cottage bed, our bodies slick with perspiration and satisfaction. Julie lay between Emma and me, her head on my shoulder while Emma's arm draped across both of us. "I never imagined," I whispered, still trying to process everything that had happened. "Life has a way of surprising us," Emma murmured, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on Julie's back. "Sometimes the best things come when we least expect them." Julie lifted her head to look at me, her eyes bright with contentment. "I'm so glad you said yes tonight." "So am I admitted, surprised by how true the words were. Though I never would have imagined my family reunion would end like this." Emma chuckled softly. "The best adventures are the ones we never see coming, say." The sun began to rise, painting the cottage walls with golden light. We finally disentangled ourselves to dress. The family barbecue was long over, most of our relatives having retired to their respective accommodations hours ago. "What happens now?" I asked as we prepared to leave the cottage, uncertainty creeping into my voice. Julie took my hands in hers, her expression serious. "That's up to you. Emma and I would love to stay in touch, to see where this connection leads, but there's no pressure, no expectations." Emma nodded in agreement. "We understand this was a big step for you. Whatever you decide, we want you to know that tonight was special for all of us." I looked at these 2 remarkable women who had opened my eyes to possibilities I'd never considered. The thought of going back to my ordinary life, of pretending this night had never happened, seemed impossible. "I'd like that," I said finally. "To stay in touch, to see what develops." Julie's smile was radiant. "I was hoping you'd say that." Emma squeezed my hand gently. "This is just the beginning." As we walked back toward the main house in the growing dawn light, I marveled at how much had changed in a single evening. I'd come to this reunion expecting nothing more than polite conversation and nostalgic memories. Instead, I'd discovered a part of myself I never knew existed, guided by a cousin whose connection to me ran deeper than blood. The other family members were still asleep as we quietly made our way to our respective rooms. At my door, Julie pulled me close for one final kiss, this one tender and full of promise. "Sweet dreams," she whispered against my lips. "They will be," I replied, knowing it was true. Later that morning, as I packed my bags for the journey home, I found a note slipped under my door. In Julie's familiar handwriting, it simply said, "Thank you for trusting us with your heart. Until next time. J&E." I folded the note carefully and tucked it into my purse, a tangible reminder that the night hadn't been a dream. As I loaded my car and prepared to leave the farm, I caught sight of Julie and Emma in the distance, walking hand in hand toward their own vehicle. Julie turned and waved, her smile visible even from afar. I waved back, feeling a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the summer heat. The drive home gave me time to process everything that had happened. By the time I reached my own front door, I knew with certainty that this was just the beginning of something beautiful and unexpected. 3 months later, I found myself on a plane to California, where Julie and Emma had invited me to spend a long weekend with them. The anticipation thrumming through my veins was familiar now, a pleasant reminder of that first night in the cottage. Family reunions, I decided, would never be quite the same again. Sometimes the most unexpected encounters change everything. Have you ever had a family gathering lead to something completely surprising? What would you do if an old relative made such a bold move? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one and love hearing your stories. Before you all go, hit that like button, subscribe for more intimate tales, and ring that notification bell so you never miss when things get interesting. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for joining me tonight. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the silk dress that hugged my curves in all the right places. At 67, I'd learned to embrace my body, the softness that came with age, the confidence that bloomed from decades of living. The photographer's studio was warm, filled with golden light that promised to capture something beautiful. I had no idea how beautiful things were about to become. His voice was smooth when he answered the door. "You must be Edith." Victor's eyes held mine a moment longer than necessary, something appreciative flickering there. At 71, he carried himself with the kind of quiet confidence that made my pulse quicken unexpectedly. "Come in, let's create something extraordinary." The studio was bathed in soft amber light. Equipment lined the walls, but it felt intimate rather than clinical. He moved with practiced grace, adjusting lights, checking angles, his movements fluid and sure. "Tell me what you're hoping for today," he said, his voice carrying genuine curiosity. "I'd come here for family photos, something elegant to leave, my children." But standing in this warm space, watching the way the light caught the silver in his hair, I found myself wanting something more. "I want to feel beautiful," I heard myself say, the honesty surprising us both. His smile was slow, knowing. "That won't be difficult, you're radiant." The compliment settled into my chest like warm honey. It had been years since a man looked at me the way he was looking at me now, like I was something worth capturing, worth savoring. Before we begin with what happened next, take a quick second to like this video and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow, and trust me, you won't want to miss what unfolds. Let's continue. He positioned me by the window first, natural light painting my skin in golden hues. "Relax your shoulders," he murmured, stepping closer. His hands brushed my arms, adjusting my posture with gentle touches that sent unexpected shivers down my spine. "Perfect. You're a natural." The camera clicked, but I barely heard it. I was lost in the way he watched me, the appreciation in his gaze making me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten were possible. "Turn slightly," he instructed, his voice softer now. "Let me see that beautiful profile." I obeyed, feeling graceful under his direction. Each click of the camera felt like a caress, each adjustment of pose drawing us into something deeper than a simple photo session. The air between us grew thick with unspoken tension. "You have incredible energy," he said, lowering the camera. For a moment, "It's magnetic." He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something woody and masculine that made my breath catch. "Would you be open to something more artistic?" I nodded before my mind could catch up with my body's response. Something about him, about this moment, made me want to say yes to everything. He led me to a different setup, draped fabric and warmer lighting that cast everything in amber and gold. "This dress is beautiful," he said, his fingers finding the strap at my shoulder. "But I think we could create something even more stunning." My heart hammered as he looked at me, waiting for permission. I thought of my quiet life, my predictable routines, and felt a wild impulse to step outside all of it. "Show me," I whispered. His hands were gentle as they found the zipper, the soft sound filling the studio like a sigh. The dress slipped from my shoulders, pooling at my feet, and I stood there in delicate lace, feeling more exposed and more alive than I had in years. "Breathtaking," he breathed, and I believed him completely. The camera captured me in ways I'd never been seen before. He guided me through poses that felt like a dance, each movement flowing into the next. His praise was constant, warm, building something inside me that I'd thought was long dormant. "You're incredible," he said, setting the camera aside finally. "Absolutely incredible." The space between us crackled with energy. I could feel my pulse in my throat, in my wrists, everywhere his eyes touched. "Victor," I said, his name feeling foreign and thrilling on my lips. He stepped closer, close enough to touch. "Tell me to stop," he said quietly, his hands hovering near my waist. Instead, I stepped into him. His lips found mine with surprising tenderness, a soft exploration that deepened when I responded. His hands settled at my waist, steady and warm, anchoring me as the kiss grew more urgent. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt this rush of pure want, this electricity that made every nerve ending sing. "Are you sure?" he murmured against my lips, and I answered by pulling him closer. The fabric backdrop became our canvas as he laid me down with careful reverence. His touch was worship, tracing lines of fire along my skin as he explored every curve, every secret place that hadn't been touched with such attention in far too long. Time blurred into sensation. His mouth followed paths his hands had mapped, drawing sounds from me that seemed to echo in the warm studio air. I arched beneath him, my body remembering rhythms I thought it had forgotten, responding with an eagerness that surprised us both. When he moved above me, his eyes locked with mine, I felt beautiful in a way that went far deeper than photographs could capture. He filled the empty spaces inside me with gentle heat, with rhythm that built slowly into something overwhelming. My breath caught, fractured into sighs and whispers as he moved with practiced skill. Every shift of his body against mine sent waves of sensation through me, building pressure that coiled tighter with each passing moment. "Let go," he whispered against my ear. And I did. The release crashed through me like warm honey, spreading from my core outward until my entire body hummed with satisfaction. He followed moments later, his own rhythm faltering as he found his peak, collapsing beside me with a satisfied exhale. We lay there in the golden light, skin damp and warm, both of us catching our breath. The studio felt like a sanctuary, our secret space where time had stopped and magic had happened. "That wasn't what I expected when I booked a photo session," I said finally, laughing softly. He traced lazy patterns on my arm. "Sometimes the best art happens when we stop planning and start feeling." Later, as I dressed in clothes that felt different against skin that had been awakened, he handed me a card. "There's a gallery opening next weekend. I'd love to take you." I took the card, feeling like a woman discovering herself for the first time. "I'd like that." The drive home was a blur of sensations and memories. My skin still tingled where he'd touched me, and I caught myself smiling in the rearview mirror. I looked different somehow, brighter, more alive. Carol was waiting when I got home, eager to hear about the photo session. My best friend of 40 years took one look at me and raised an eyebrow. "What happened to you?" "What do you mean?" I asked, though I could feel the flush still warming my cheeks. "You're glowing," she said, studying my face with sharp eyes. "And that dress is wrinkled in very interesting places." I couldn't hide the smile that spread across my face. "It was an artistic session." "Artistic? My rear end?" Carol laughed. "You got yourself thoroughly handled by that photographer, didn't you?" The way she said it, without judgment but with obvious delight, made me laugh too. "Maybe I did." "Good for you," she exclaimed. "It's about time you remembered you're still a vibrant, beautiful woman. Tell me everything," so I did. I told her about the way he looked at me, the way his hands felt against my skin, the way he made me feel beautiful and desired and completely alive. Carol listened with growing excitement, living vicariously through every detail. "You're seeing him again, aren't you?" she asked when I finished. "Gallery opening next weekend," I confirmed. "Then we're going shopping. You need something that will make him remember exactly what he's getting into." The week passed in a haze of anticipation. I found myself checking my reflection more often, noticing the way my eyes seemed brighter, my smile more frequent. Whatever Victor had awakened in me was still very much alive. Friday evening, I stood in front of my closet trying to choose the perfect dress for our date. Carol had insisted on something black and figure-hugging, something that would make him think about peeling it off me again. The phone rang just as I was slipping into the dress. Victor's voice was warm through the receiver. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said without preamble. "Good," I replied, surprising myself with my boldness. "Because I can't stop thinking about you either. The gallery opens at 7. Would you like me to pick you up?" "I'll meet you there," I said. "I want to make an entrance." His laugh was rich, promising. "I look forward to it." The gallery was crowded when I arrived, filled with Miami's art scene in all its varied glory. I spotted Victor immediately, distinguished in a dark suit, talking to a woman with dramatic jewelry. But the moment our eyes met across the room, everything else faded. He excused himself and made his way over, his gaze traveling the length of my body with obvious appreciation. "You look stunning," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. His lips lingered longer than necessary, his breath warm against my ear. "Thank you," I murmured, feeling that familiar flutter of excitement. He kept his hand at the small of my back as we moved through the gallery, the possessive touch sending little thrills through me. We pretended to look at art, but I was more interested in the way he looked at me, the heat in his eyes that promised more intimate moments to come. "Would you like to see my home studio?" he asked as the evening wound down. "I have some pieces I think you'd appreciate." I knew it wasn't really about the art, and I didn't care. I'd love to. His house was elegant, filled with photographs that told stories of light and shadow, of moments captured in time. But I was more interested in the man beside me, the way he moved through his space with quiet confidence. "Wine?" he offered, already moving toward the kitchen. "Please," I said, following him, watching the way his hands moved as he opened the bottle. He handed me a glass, our fingers brushing in the exchange. The simple touch sent electricity up my arm, reminding me of all the ways those hands had explored my body. "To beautiful subjects," he said, raising his glass. To talented photographers, I replied, and we drank. The wine was good, but it was the way he was looking at me that made me feel intoxicated. He set his glass down and stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "I've been thinking about you all week," he said, his voice low and rough. "Show me what you've been thinking," I challenged. This time there was no hesitation. His mouth crashed into mine with hunger that had been building since we parted. I melted into him, my body remembering exactly how perfect we fit together. His hands found the zipper of my dress with practiced ease, and the garment slipped away like a whisper. Standing there in his kitchen in nothing but lace and moonlight, I felt powerful, desired, completely alive. "Bedroom," I whispered against his lips, and he needed no further encouragement. He lifted me easily, carrying me down the hallway as if I weighed nothing. The gesture made me feel cherished, precious, and I buried my face in his neck, breathing in his scent. His bedroom was bathed in soft lamplight, intimate and warm. He set me down gently, his hands immediately finding my skin, reacquainting themselves with every curve and hollow. I helped him out of his clothes, marveling at the lean strength of his body, the way his muscles moved beneath my touch. When we came together this time, it was with the knowledge of what we could create together, the memory of previous pleasure guiding us toward new heights. He worshipped my body with patient thoroughness, his mouth and hands mapping territories that had been neglected for too long. I responded with abandon, my back arching as he found sensitive spots that made me gasp his name. When he finally joined our bodies, it was with a reverence that brought tears to my eyes. We moved together in ancient rhythm, building toward a crescendo that left us both shaking with its intensity. Afterward, we lay entwined in the lamplight, my head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. I felt transformed, like a butterfly emerging from a cocoon I hadn't even realized I'd been trapped in. "Stay the night," he said, his fingers combing through my hair. "Yes," I whispered, and meant it completely. Morning brought coffee in bed and lazy kisses that tasted like new beginnings. Victor traced patterns on my bare shoulder as we talked about art and life and the unexpected magic of finding passion. "At our age, I want to photograph you again," he said. "Not for any client or portfolio, just for us." "Whenever you want," I agreed, feeling beautiful under his gaze. "What would your friend Carol say about this?" he asked with amusement. I laughed, thinking of my best friend's reaction. "She'd probably want all the details and then demand to know if you have any single friends." "Actually," he said thoughtfully, "I might know someone who'd be perfect for her." The idea of Carol finding her own late-in-life romance filled me with joy. We'd both spent too many years thinking our best days were behind us when clearly they were just beginning. As I dressed to leave, Victor pulled me close for one more kiss. "Dinner tonight?" he asked. "I'd love that," I said, already counting the hours until I'd see him again. The drive home was different this time. I felt like I was returning as a new version of myself, someone who had remembered what it felt like to be desired, to be alive in her own skin. Carol was waiting with coffee and croissants, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Well?" she demanded the moment I walked in. "Well, what?" I teased, though I could feel the smile spreading across my face. "Don't play coy with me, Edith. You didn't come home last night." I settled into my chair, accepting the coffee she offered. "No, I didn't. And it was wonderful," I said simply. "He makes me feel things I thought I'd forgotten how to feel." Carol clapped her hands together, delighted. "I knew it. The moment you walked in yesterday, I could tell something had shifted. You look 10 years younger." "I feel it too," I admitted. "Like I've been sleepwalking and suddenly I'm awake again." We talked for hours, Carol living vicariously through every detail I was willing to share. By the time she left, we'd already planned shopping trips for new clothes and discussed the possibility of her meeting Victor's single friend. That evening, Victor took me to a small bistro overlooking the water. We talked and laughed like old friends, but underneath the conversation was the electric awareness of what we'd shared, the promise of what was to come. "I have a confession," he said as we shared dessert. "When you first walked into my studio, I knew you were going to change my life." "How could you know that?" I asked, touched by his honesty. "The way you carried yourself, the light in your eyes, you had this energy that was just waiting to be set free." "And you set it free," I said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "We set it free together," he corrected, bringing my fingers to his lips. The kiss he pressed to my knuckles sent familiar heat spiraling through me, and I knew that whatever this was between us, it was far from over. It was just beginning. Have you ever had someone see the real you hiding beneath the surface? Someone who made you remember who you were meant to be? Sometimes the most unexpected encounters awaken parts of ourselves we thought were gone forever. What would you do if someone offered to show you a side of yourself you'd forgotten existed? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Turn on notifications, because you won't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for being here with me.